developer Project Moon has gathered something of a cult with its release of titles like Lobotomy Corp, Library of Ruina, and most recently the mobile game Limbus Company. I'd been meaning to play Library of Ruina for a while. I already had it on PC. It's a deck builder. I love card games and games about cards. I even played several trading card games and deck builders, but alas, it was lost to the backlog. Until Arc System Works published a port of the game on consoles, which makes it more convenient, so this time we'll get it done. Library of Ruina stars the peculiar duo of Roland and Angela. Roland is a grade 9 fixer, a low-level mercenary in a mystical library he shouldn't have been able to access. This library is headed by Angela, an artificial intelligence who wants to become human and leave the library. So, logically, she violently enlists his assistant in hunting down a particular magic book that will allow them to do so. Now, apparently, the only way to do this will be to fill it with more books, the stories of the outside world. The library does this by sending invitations to people, making them fight and kill them when they enter, and turning them into said books. This becomes the main narrative loop. Roland and Angela watch some people who have become the target of an invitation before they eventually enter, and then Roland gets to work. While this may seem like a morbid setup that constantly throws its cast to the curb, the events begin to play into one another, showing the depravity of the world in which the game is set. People are forced into doing dirty work to survive, and the corrupt play with lives from the top, leading to more powerful enemies and recurring characters who either escape from the library or willingly send others to their doom. I did end up finding some story beats to be needlessly dark in a redundant manner. Still, ultimately, the story of Library of Ruina tells a rather compelling narrative as the library becomes a more significant and concerning threat to those at the top. There's also a supporting cast of other librarians whom Angela awakens to assist her in her plans. These are essentially the co-workers from the Lobotomy Corporation, and this game is a direct sequel. You'll enjoy more of the cast if you play the Lobotomy Corporation first, but the structure of Library of Ruina allows someone to play this first without too much trouble. Roland is unaware of the events of Lobotomy Corporation, and thus everything is explained to him as an outsider. The story sections from the other librarians will always have him present for those purposes. Additionally, as a fun foil to this, Roland is the only one who understands the grim nature of the city and is relied upon to explain all sorts of aspects of it to everyone else. The story is presented as a visual novel, with full voice acting in Korean and now Japanese, which was added for the Switch port, and it really needs it. To keep costs down with a frankly absurd number of characters, the cast members have one portrait apiece, which can make the game feel extremely static. There are a good number of CGs though, which means you'll probably find your favorite minor character in at least one group shot. The combat in Library Arena is similar to that of a turn-based card game, with pages used as cards. Each corresponds to a particular actions, with an attack or defense value based on the dice roll range, which you must then slap someone to reduce their health to 0. You start with 4 cards at the beginning of the battle, which is referred to as an act, and then you draw from each card, which is called a scene. You can also select as many pages per turns as you have a speed die. These die will roll each turn and influence the turn order. Each page has a cost and will consume how many lights needed to use, which characters starting with 3 or 4 max lights, and that number growing as the battle ranges on, along with other characters regaining 1 light per turn. Hitting someone with offensive pages will also decrease a stagger bar, stunning them if they hit 0. You can also see what pages your opponents will use and who they'll target, allowing you to step in with the correct picks. It's honestly a lot to explain, and we'll be here forever if I try to do it all. Still, here's the short version. You pick pages and zoom across the screen at your opponents to hit them with single frame animation punctuated with satisfying visual and sound effects. You get a bunch of different parties thanks to each librarian's head effectively being a party leader for up to 4 other customizable characters, and your deck size limit for each character is 9. Further, these characters can essentially have an armor slot tied to their deck and can fill 9 slots with accessories obtained through battle. There's honestly a lot of room for depth here, and this isn't even getting into the EGO pages. You can spend a while crafting your perfect decks to take on powerful guests and fancy abnormalities that function as challenging puzzle bosses. Figuring out the right combinations of cards is excellent. There is, however, an issue with just how often you need to do so. The issue is not raw difficulty, the problem is the level grinding. It cannot be understated how much grinding they added to this visual novel. To get new cards, you burn character pages you obtained from levels with several cards and equipment drops. You are eventually guaranteed all the drops when you burn enough pages, but this may require rematching your last opponent multiple times. You also can't burn all your pages because it costs character pages to enter stages. I know this is all getting a bit long-winded, but bear with me. Keeping the same deck for the entire game would be boring, so you'll obviously want to find new powerful pages as the game goes on. But Library of Ruina goes the extra mile in making the next set of pages constantly much more powerful than the last. This means you'll want to grind multiple characters worth of pages every time there's a new slot. The power creep between story events is constant, forcing you to grind repeatedly to ensure your cast can keep up with the competition. But if you don't have enough character pages, you might have to go back so that you can grind a previous stage, just so you can go back to the current one and grind some more. This is extremely tedious. It feels like a gacha game that wants its players to pull for the next significant character or weapon and grind daily. No wonder Limbus Company was a gacha release. Almost entirely replacing your deck is frustrating too because it feels like the player is locked into certain decks as puzzle solutions rather than being able to organically build stronger decks and slowly substitute cards while finding new strategies. I want to read the cool and edgy visual novel with good music and a fun cast, but instead I'm spending well over half the game time just grinding with no sense of satisfaction. I'm usually pretty good at dealing with dodgy pacing and forced grinding in smaller games, but Library Arena is using this grind to rock a playtime length of well over 100 hours, putting the game in the same territory as titles like Persona 5 or 100%ing Xenoblade. Except those games don't ever feel like they're wasting my time. There's also another crippling issue we have to talk about, and that's the game's port. If you want to lie down and sink your teeth into this casually, it's impossible. Whereas, for example, a twin-stick shooter like Ocho will just play a bit better on PC than consoles thanks to different control schemes. Library Arena does not have this kind of discrepancy. The font is far too small on Switch, and certain UI elements which can include page effects are impossible to read. The screen shake used for immersiveness in the visual novel sections is also dreadful on the Switch, blurring the screen far more than on PC and making the one thing unaffected by the unscaled text unreadable, as the backlog text is also far too small to reliably read. The menu navigation is also frustrating. On PC, you do everything with the mouse and there are layers upon layers of menus, but on the controller, this is made more complicated by it not being terribly clear what parts of the menus can actually be selected. You have to press L, R, and D-pad constantly to figure out what you can even do. Touch controls would have been great on the Switch, except for the minor issue of things being nigh impossible to read, I guess. So, Library Arena is a game I really wanted to enjoy more. The story is good, the cast is good, the music is good, and the combat can be really good. But the way that the game inflates its numbers is just absurd and turns progression into a struggle more than doubling the game's actual length. And the state of the port, text issues like these are unacceptable. If you're gonna play this game, please play it on PC. Noisy Pixel is giving Library of Ruina on Nintendo Switch a 4 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.